couple of things I just want to clarify is I've talked about AQUA as if the major thing about the Code of Ethics is just that two-page document. And you may have wondered, I think someone mentioned earlier, the nurse's Code of Ethics goes, yeah, it's half an inch thick. It's a lot more than 2 pages. This is like the starting point. This has got a bit of a historic root with that stuff back in 1967. They've expanded on that. So as well as the document you've got, there's a bunch of others that I'm just too cheap to print out and hand out to you all. That's the professional practice series. There's practice guidelines. This is about how to actually assess yourself or to assess your workers if you're the supervisor on how you're going with how you should be behaving. So the practice guidelines includes the Code of Ethics, but it also includes tools like this one that actually asks you a bunch of questions to help you actually decide, okay, am I a fully ethical worker? So in this case, do I challenge policies and practices that are unjust or that fail to meet the accepted community standards like human and legal rights? Or do I reflect on my personal beliefs and values? And you can see there's a column there for you to say yourself, yes, no, maybe, doesn't apply in my job. And there's a column there for the supervisor to say whether they do. So this is like, and there's a final column there for what's your proof? Where's your evidence? So where's evidence of you reflecting on your personal beliefs? Because anyone can just say, yeah, sure, I do all this stuff. Mate, this is good, I'm qualified. This is about best practice. So there's a few pages of these. I've given you a couple of examples on the board there, but that's one of the tools that AQUA provides to help bring up those professional standards, how to help people meet the indicators. Another is a series of information sheets. They call them the Practical Ethics series. There's one there on addressing unprofessional or unethical behaviour in a colleague, because I think I could see people saying earlier that it's actually quite difficult then, because I need to address unethical behaviour by a co-worker, but I need to address that with them first. And I also need to be accountable to the industry and to my profession, to my employer. And how do I... So there's sheets here that will help that. Or professional and ethical use of personal social media accounts. A bit more detail on what I was talking about earlier. Now this is 2 that you can get from the AQUA website for nothing, whether you're a member or not. To encourage people to join and to support their members, this is like a sample. There will be a series of these rolling out over the next few years on specific ethical issues to help people go, yeah, okay, that makes sense, here's how it works. And if you're a member, you can be part of that discussion in contributing on here's what the paper should be, or here's what our stance as an industry should be. Really good discussions for you to be part of. So yeah, I'd encourage you to join. That's one of the other things that AQUA is offering as well. I want us to go back to our original questions. Is it unethical to ask a co-worker out on a date? We've looked at the Code of Ethics now. The majority of you said very quickly, yes it is. Does it say somewhere in the Code of Ethics that it is? So are you separating your personal morals, your personal beliefs on here's what right and proper behaviour is, or even societies, if you like, from here's what the industry has said? Because, and the same about accepting. In fact, for each of these, I'd actually say, when is it unethical? Because sometimes it would be most definitely unethical. So your organisation has a policy, fantastic. So there's, hang on, just, so there's, remember those overlapping circles? So you're talking about a policy area. So that doesn't apply to the entire industry, but it certainly applies to that workplace. But you're saying that they have a policy for that reason because the client's intellectual disabilities, and it's difficult for the clients when workers start forming these relationships. It affects the worker relationship. So that's a key to it. So really, you've answered it really nicely there, because when is it unethical to ask a co-worker on a date? When it affects our responsibilities to our clients as spelt out in that document. When is it unethical to accept a present from a grateful client? This was a big debate. For a long, long time, people said, no, no, never, ever. And then we realised that that's actually a bit less dignity for the clients. They actually don't like this dependent relationship that you're setting up that says, you keep giving me stuff and I never get to say thank you back again. And we said, oh, no, that's because part of my ethics is that I won't do that. I'm doing it all for the good of the clients. And it's like, well, if it's for the good of the clients, can I have the dignity of saying thank you? But there's limits to that, and exactly, there's agency policies that will spell that out as to how much that is. So I'm a public servant because I'm employed by CIT, and the public servant code of ethics specifies gifts up to this much, here's what you do with it. Gifts beyond that could be seen as a bribe. So thanks anyway, I'll happily accept the Mentos lolly, but I won't accept anything that could be seen to be influencing your results. That's pretty clear as a teacher. That's in the same way. When's it unethical? When it affects our responsibilities to our clients, to our colleagues, to our employer, or where it affects the reputation of the profession. So accepting a present, I'd be really careful. The clients know they don't have to do that. So I'd be thinking about doing it in a quiet way. If several people all at the end of a group that I'd been running felt like giving me gifts, we do that quietly in the back so the other don't feel like they've got a lesser service or they're lesser people because they didn't say thank you in the same way. Responsibilities to colleagues, responsibilities to our employer, so our employer doesn't suffer because of us receiving those gifts. How much do we allow? And affecting the reputation of the profession, because it could look like we accept a lot of bribes. Even though it might be within agency policy, it could appear. So it's not whether it just does it, it's how would it affect their reputation. Same with the family members. That can really make the industry look a bit dodgy. That can make it unfair for clients and colleagues. You get it. Cool. I've got some questions for you all. Is it unethical to lay a complaint to the Ombudsman or to the union about unethical behaviour of your co-workers? Is it unethical to lay a complaint about the organisation? Is it unethical to employ a former client? Or is it unethical to give your opinion about the government on Facebook or Instagram or whatever? And is it unethical to tell clients about your own personal background? Keeping in mind we have peer workers and lots of organisations, you actually go from being, some structures you go from being a client and you graduate to being a leader. How do we work that? The key question is not, is it or isn't it? That's it, you're catching on. It's not a yes or no question. Let me do a bit of internet PowerPoint magic here and say not just is it unethical, but when, at what point. We're going to have a bit of a discussion about this, and I want you to say why it's unethical. I'll give you a very short answer for each. The answer is when it affects our responsibility for each and every one of those questions. But let's think of, so as a group, I want you to form into smaller groups. I want you to think about or to write down times when you can see that it would be. When does it actually reach the point where it is unethical to do each of those things? I want people to split into groups, so if there's 4 areas there, I'll get you to look at 2 questions each. You guys look at, so this side of the room looks at questions 1 and 2. This side of the room looks at 3 and 4. I'll put them all back up on the board in a moment. Those of you who are listening to the recording, you can answer all 4 and tell us. You'll get to see what other people have had to say. So for those listening to the recording, when we've done, we're basically reaching the point where we've met each of the learning outcomes for this particular learning topic.